Welcome. Welcome to the Highland Lake Association annual meeting and our first try at doing both an in-person and online at the same time. So it's taken us a little bit to get the IT to work. I have my expert right here, Kevin, trying to work us through this whole thing. So Kevin, if you want to hit the first slide. Yes. Before we get started, there's a few people here that I'd like to recognize, and I'm going to ask Keith to make one introduction.
With us is Adam Zeemans, who has been Executive Director of Lake Stewards of Maine for 9 months. Before that, he was with he ran an environmental company in Bolivia in South America. He has been on the Highland Lake. He's helped me doing water quality, and asked Adam sometime after the meeting about his adventures and riots and revolutions in South America. And if Adam wishes to say more, especially about Lake Stewards, here comes Adam.
Keep it super short. I just want to say that I got started as a volunteer lake monitor with Keith Williams and with Ralph Johnson in 2008. I was certified on to work on Highland Lake. Highland Lake is an amazing association. I don't know if you're all aware of how amazing you are, because if we look at the range of associations, you're way on the extreme, like excelling. So congratulations on that. I'm hoping to move back to Highland Lake. I'm currently in Penobscot. So if anybody has a place, I'm interested. Yeah, just that. And thank you for having me here. And there's information on Lake Stewards of Maine in the back. We protect 500 lakes in the state through our volunteer training program. On the invasive side, on the water quality side, we have 1,200 volunteers in the state, and we're continually wanting to train more volunteers to be kind of the preventative protection as we go through unprecedented threats to our lakes in the state of Maine. So thank you.
There's a few other folks that have been really instrumental in helping out Highland Lake. We have Hope Cahan. She is a council member from the town of Falmouth, and I think vice chair of the council. And online, we have a couple of folks, Sharon Mann, who has been doing some extensive testing with us on a number of different directions. She's been looking at photoplankton, phytoplankton, and testing with us on all of the oxygen and temperatures, et cetera. And no less than that, we have Gretchen Anderson from the town of Windham, who is a former board member, and she's great. She's helped us out a great deal, all the way from being a board member to helping us work some ordinance through the town of Windham to better protect the lake. So, if we could, ready? Yep. For those people online, we've got Q&A. Use the Q&A online so that you'll be able to send your questions in. We'll field those questions, read them so that the group here can hear them as well. And likewise, when folks here have questions, we'll respond to them. We'll repeat the questions so that the people online can hear them, and then we'll provide the answers as best we can. But I think the best way to do this is we'll allow questions at the end of each of the speakers, and limited, we can't go on forever, but we will have some time at the end if anybody's interested in pursuing any of their questions further. The agenda. I'm going to provide an update on what's going on in Highland Lake since the last meeting that we had. And then Peter Herring from our Warden service will give us some overview of the Warden service and deal on a few specific issues. Tom VerLee is going to walk us through some of the required administrative activities that we need to do at an official annual meeting. And then Kevin McIlerney is going to lead the eagle banding that happened just a few weeks ago here on the lake. Pretty impressive. So I think you'll really enjoy that. I'm gonna run through a whole bunch of things here. First thing is we didn't get much rain out there, so our lake level is still low. And I'm going to talk about a lot of activities that are going on around the lake. I'll touch on the alewife count for this year and show you the trend that we've been seeing. There was the Inland Fish and Wildlife did a fish survey on the lake last year. I'll cover that. And then water quality, which is obviously a pretty big deal. And then I'll wrap up with financials. Probably the question that we get the most is what's going on with the water. So if you look at the graph here, the red indicates the lake level this year, and the horizontal line says 0. And so that line, those red dots are showing how fast the water levels dropped this year. So we're just about, I looked this afternoon, and Kevin and our gauges are not quite exactly the same, but I'd say we're at 9 inches below the crest of the dam right now. And that's a lot for this time of the year. We were close to this last year, but then we had a really wet July and August, and the water levels came right up, but we haven't seen that as yet. Next slide. Okay, there's 2 photographs here. The one on the left actually shows things. The arrow is pointing up to the fishway. Lake level is dependent on 5 things. I'll give you a real quick reminder. Amount of rainfall we get, for sure. The size of our watershed, which is really small, 8 square miles. The width of the dam. We have a very wide dam, and it drains the water really fast down to the top of the dam. The amount of evaporation we get, and the required flow that we need to be letting out of the lake all the time. The first 4, the rainfall and precipitation, width of the dam, those things we can't do much about. But on the part of amount of water that has to be let out of the lake, it was set back in the year 2000. And a gentleman, some of you may know, John Wilcox. He used to live on the lake, moved away 3 or 4 years ago, I think. John, I have all of his records, and John did an incredible job pushing to keep the amount that we were required to let out of the lake as low as possible, because since the new dam went in, we have a lot lower levels in the lake than we did before. And the one thing he was having trouble breaking through on was getting it any lower than it is. And we have basically 2 flow levels. One is 5.6 cubic feet a second. That's about 2,500 gallons a minute. And we have to let that out while the alewives are coming into the lake so that they can make their way up the fish ladder. And then once they're done coming in, then there needs to be enough water for them to be able to leave and to maintain enough water in the stream for the trout to survive in Mill Grove. Well, it ends up since 2000, when John was working on this, some very sophisticated tools have been made, models have been made that will show how much rainfall or how much flow a stream should have based on where it is in the state, what the watershed area is, and all of those factors. And we started looking at that, and for the average summer flow, it would be 1 cubic foot a second, but we've been required to do 2.8. So been working for 2 years to get to this point, and 2 weeks ago, we finally got the okay to drop to 1 cubic foot a second. It's not going to make the lake come back up, but it will really slow the rate that it drops. So, long effort, and really pleased that we were finally able to get there. Now, that 1 cubic foot a second is the average flow that you would get in the middle of the summer on an average year. We're way below an average year. So there would be virtually no water. At this point, if we weren't letting water out, there'd be nothing leaving the lake. The evaporation is the biggest loss of water that we have right now. And with the kind of day, if you get a hot, dry day with a wind, we can lose over 3/4 of an inch in a day. So fortunately, usually when it's really hot like this and humid, we're not losing as much because it's so humid, it can't pull as much out of the lake. The photo on the right is another issue that we're dealing with. And this is the sluice gate on the other side of the dam from the fish ladder. You can see water coming out of it. That's supposed to be closed. And we need to maintain the flows that I just shared with you through the fish ladder. But the sluice gate is supposed to be closed. And even though there's water coming in, we can't count that as part of what we're releasing. So we're working with the city of Westbrook to try to get them to fix that so that we're not losing that additional water. That's probably a ½ inch a month that we're losing there. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you add up 3 or 4 months and now you're starting to get on top of what we're already having to release. The new flow regime that we have will save about 10 inches of water a year. So we will end up 10 inches better than we would have been if we not had this new flow schedule. So pretty pleased that we were able to get there. Things that have happened since last year. Last year, we introduced navigational aids, and this year we doubled the number of them. And we were able to do that because different road associations volunteered to put them in the spring, take them out in the fall and store them. So we really appreciate all of the help that we've been getting on this. And if there are some more that you think need to go out, let us know, get your road association to volunteer, and we're happy to accommodate you. We have to pay for them. It's not a whole lot, but we'll rig them up and have them ready to go. On the top right, the middle one, the middle photo here shows where the different markers are on the lake. And as I said, there's more than a few more probably that we could put out there. On the upper right, there's a whole group of people having a good time on a Saturday paddle. If you haven't been on a Saturday paddle, and I've been on almost every one of them, so I'm sure most of you haven't, I encourage you to give it a try. It's not a race, it's very casual. Every time we have seen eagles, loons, turtles, you name it, we've seen it all. So it's just a lot of fun. You can leave from wherever you are on the lake, but at 9:30 on every other Saturday, we leave from the Narrows and go down to the dam and back. And you get to meet new folks and just a lot of fun. The lower right picture is we're going to reenact something that I think was done in the past before I was here. And we're going to have a swim across the lake. So any of you folks ready to swim across the lake? John McKinnon over here is organizing this. There's a sign out front, and we're planning on one of the days on the last weekend of July. Just real quickly, if you're gonna swim, you're gonna need a spotter to be with you in a kayak or paddleboard, and we'll have pontoon boats out there too in case anybody gets in trouble. Need to sign a waiver as well. Next slide.
Where does it start?
Starts at our dock, which is directly across the lake from Winslow Commons. I've got a black and yellow sailboat that's at the dock there. And I'll put a sail up so you can see it. And it's best to come by water to the starting place because there's limited parking.
So for those online, if you couldn't hear that, the start point for the swim will be at John McKinnon's house at the end of Haven Road. And it will swim across to Winslow Commons, and we can bring people back to John's house with the pontoon boats that we'll have out there. And if you've got, Christy.
I just wanted to add that when we started this like 20 years ago or something, it was mostly a kid thing. We called it the Kid Swim. And we went from our dock over to the Scots with no sense. So I just want all of these adults here to know that all the adults are certainly welcome, but the kids like to do it too. So feel free to bring adults or grandkids or kids along too.
So
but you have to keep, if somebody has, an adult has to be with the kid.
Yes.
Everybody has to have a spotter, either Michael Speaks or Olympic swimmer or whatever.
Right. So if those folks online couldn't hear this, it used to be a kids event, but people of all ages are welcome to participate, but everyone will need a spotter. Okay, alewife update. You can see on the curve on the left that on the very left, where you just see the really short bars, that's where alewives were first being stocked into the lake. And then all of a sudden you see it spike in, there's an empty one there after the first big one in 2013. And it isn't that we had none, we just didn't count them that year. So it's likely it's up in the 40,000 range, similar to the years on either side. But then we peaked at 64,000 in 2018, and it's just been a downhill slide since then. And we're not really sure why. DMR did some radio tracking on some fish this year. I have not seen the results yet. They said they'd reach out to me as soon as they get it. But they did put in a new fishway at Sacarapa Falls in Westbrook, and we think there is some speculation that a lot of them, instead of fighting their way up a skinny little brook, you can stay right in the Presumpscot River, and it's a whole lot easier. So we think that may be part of that. Inland Fish and Wildlife did a survey last year. I'd heard from a number of people that, geez, what happened to all the white perch we used to have in the lake? Used to catch them all the time, and now we can't catch them. And there is some anecdotal evidence out there that in some lakes that have introduced or reintroduced alewives, that they've outcompeted the white perch larval stage and wiped them out. So with some pushing and prodding, our good friends at IFW said, okay, we'll do it. We'll do it at the same time we did it in 2008 and 2010. The same time, same locations, leave the nets in for the same period of time. And I don't know if you can read all of those, but we had 196 white perch in 2008, only 33 in 2010, and we had 264 last summer. We don't have a shortage of white perch. And interestingly enough, they were spitting up baby alewives as they were pulling them in. You will note that there are no brown trout or Atlantic salmon because they haven't been stocked for 10 years. So you wouldn't expect to see any, because this is not it's a challenging cold water fishery. Yes, sir.
Why is that?
IFW stopped stocking the lake because we did not have a trailered launch. We only have a public carry-in launch. And at the time, that was the rule.
There used to be a trailer launch.
Yeah, it's no longer a trailered launch.
Why is that?
There was a discussion at the town of Falmouth, and I think I wasn't on the, well, I was on the lake then, but it was overwhelmingly voted by people within the Highland Lake Association, do not do that. It will just bring milfoil to the lake. Many of the surrounding lakes have it. We're the closest lake to Portland, and we would be overwhelmed. So that was the rationale. But the rules have changed, and I know there will be a question later to talk about that. Now carry-in launches can, lakes with carry-in launches can stock travel.
You mean the association or state?
It doesn't have to be the association. It could be people, any group of people who wanted to do that. But we'll talk about it a little bit
All
later.
right.
So, we can roll. I did want to mention, we just came in contact with a gentleman named Robert King, and we just found out that he's been studying the loons on the lake since 2013. He put together a paper, and it's got incredible detail and photographs of what he saw. And 2016 was the last successful loon chick that we had on the lake, and he was there at least every 2 days from the time that was from the egg was laid through to its being born. He's got some incredible video that we're going to end up putting in a link so that anyone who wants to watch it can watch it. It's really spectacular. This is a photograph that he's got. You can't see as well here, but when you see it online, you'll be able to see he's got looks like a little crawfish in its mouth. But he's got it. He chronicled that chick all the way up to its learning to fly. So it's really pretty neat.
there's questions about the current injury. Do you want me to give a quick update on that?
Sure. There was a question about a loon. We do have an injured loon on the lake right now. Kevin has been the closest to that, so.
So, and this probably happened around 4th of July, because that's when people started noticing a loon. It was staying in the shallows, holding its leg up and not diving. So I had contacted David Evers from BRI to say, can you come and, they also got a message through Loon Haven to say there's a problem with the loon on the lake. We went out and tried to capture it, but it's actually too healthy to capture right now. It can get around pretty well with one flipper. It's feeding fairly well, but it's just not diving, which means it'll have trouble feeding and it won't be able to probably take off come when we start to get some ice. So right now it's just being tracked, and the BRI folks are going to see if they can plan on a nighttime capture. It's really hard to call a loon in that doesn't have a chick. They have a whole process. If it does have a chick, it doesn't. It's very difficult to do. But right now it's just like, leave it alone, don't approach it. And as we get more information, we'll let people know through communication channels.
He was at the end of Rockaway Road last night.
Yeah.
He was feeding pretty darn good.
Yeah, so we were getting reports all around the entire lake. Everybody's saying it's over here, it's over here, it's over here. I'd say probably half of them are actually it, because there's 4 loons on the lake right now. But for the most part, we don't need to know where it is, because you could tell me where it is right now, and by the time you get home, it's going to be someplace else. So, but I appreciate that, and everybody's really doing a great job trying to figure out what's going on. But we will keep the communication going.
I was talking with Robert King about this, and one of the things that the timing may be just coincidental, but about the time we first noticed this injured loon, the nest was abandoned. So I don't know whether it got injured trying to protect the nest, or something else happened to it. Did it get hit by a boat prop? Did it, we don't know. But anyway, it sounds a whole lot more interesting story if it got injured trying to protect the egg. I'm going to move on to water quality, because this is where the Highland Lake Association spends a great deal of time. Yes, Dave.
What is the loon population right
On our lake,
There's one mating pair and anywhere up to 6 that come and go. Yep.
so we do a lot of water testing on this lake, and ever since we had the bloom back in the 2014 through 2017 years, we did extensive. We were one of the most tested lakes in Maine, trying to figure out what the cause of that was. And these graphs are just, I'm not going to go through these. They're pretty complicated, and this isn't the place for it, but we have Keith Williams here, and we can, anybody has questions, you can catch Keith after the meeting, or, give us a question, and we'll meet with you at some other time to go through these in more detail. What I do want to touch, though, is our Secchi disc measurements. So if you look at the diagram on the left, for those people who don't know what Secchi discs are, it's a black and white pattern disc that we drop down into the water till you just lose sight of it. You move it up and down till you can just barely make it out. And then you measure how far down that is. And that's a measure of water clarity. And if you could do one test to determine how good your water quality is, that's probably it. That's telling you a whole lot of information. That's kind of the sum of all the parts. And so, it's really important for us to pay attention to that. It's cheap. All you need is volunteers, and we do that on a very regular basis on the lake. If you look at the chart, you'll see the red dots. Being low is better. That means you're seeing deeper into the water. So you can see that we're way below where we have been at some times in the past. And if you look, you can see, indicated on here is how close to the surface we got with the bloom in 2017. So we've improved there significantly. And this next graph is, let's see, 50 years of data. And you can see there's a steady climb. And the thing that I think you should all be really proud of is that it's getting better. And all of the work that you've had with the HLA and road associations fixing roads and everything else, that's why this is turning around. So you deserve a lot of credit for the fact that you're here. The fact that you're here or online means you care enough that you're paying attention, and I'd be willing to bet that all of your sites, all of your houses are really good environmentally for the lake. So thank you for everything that you do for the lake. But you can see the curve kind of flattened out in the 2003-04 range, and that was the first time I think that we did a watershed survey, and I think somewhere around $800,000 was spent fixing roads and stuff, and we flattened the curve. Where have I heard that before? But then we kind of relapsed, and we started losing water clarity. And then once the blooms hit, everybody got serious about this again, and we're seeing that curve go in the right direction. I want to take just a minute to talk about phosphorus, because that's where the problem comes from. If you've got clear water, that means you've got lower levels of phosphorus. But phosphorus is everywhere. It's in the ground. Every living thing that I can think of needs phosphorus to live. We all do. Look at your cereal. It tells you how much phosphorus is in it. Look at your dog food bag. It tells you how much phosphorus is in it. And we all need it, but too much of it really starts to cause a problem. And in the natural world, before we were, well, let's go to the next slide. Before man came, when we got heavy rains, the trees, the canopy that we had stopped a lot of the rain from hitting hard onto the ground. And the mid-level brush and stuff slowed it even more, and then the ground cover even more. So we didn't get nearly the erosion into the lake that we get now. But when people build houses, you disturb the earth, you're exposing a whole lot more phosphorus, and with heavy rains, that can easily get swept into a local stream and ultimately into the lake. And that's where it starts to cause problems, because it's fertilizer for the lake. So there's two kinds of man-made sources. One, fortunately, we don't have any of them. Large farms, quarries, sand pits, etc. We have non-point source. And that's, as we've said a lot of times, that's death by a million cuts. Every one of us, everything that we do in the entire watershed ultimately affects the lake. Not a lot, but there's 1,000 houses in the watershed. So if everybody does a little bit, changes things a little bit, it ultimately affects the lake. And I wanted to put this in perspective. A new 50-acre development with the rules that we have in place now can only release 1 pound of phosphorus a year. Okay? We have about 616 dogs in the watershed, and they put out 40 to 80 pounds a year. And I'm assuming with that 75% of the people pick up after their dogs. I don't know if that's high or low, but and of what's left, only 10% of that makes it to the lake. So 2.5% of what's out there, 1,500 pounds of phosphorus a year from the dogs within our watershed. So horses, we've got 10 in the watershed, and if only 10% of their phosphorus output makes it to the lake, we're at 40 to 50 pounds. Roads are about 105, and houses are about 150 pounds. I was pretty active in challenging the Chase project years ago, based on their phosphorus. We were in the middle of our blooms, and we were really concerned about what was happening. But and we did stop them, and part of it was because of their phosphorus. They hadn't accurately calculated how much they were going to release. But that project is 35 acres, 37 acres, so they can only release about 0.8 pounds. So that's about 6 of our houses. So it's a big deal. So yeah, at the very bottom, existing houses put out about 4 or 5 times what a house in the development would put out. And talk about disturbing the earth. Here's 95 years of growth just in Wyndham. The left one is 1925, and the right one is 2020. There's a few more red dots in there, and every one of them means, as I look at this, I don't know how many of the roads were there in 1925. Probably most of them were not. But so we've added roads, lots of houses, septic systems, lawns, fertilizers, dogs, all of it. So that's why that curve you saw before on water clarity was going the wrong way, is just a lot of growth. And starting in 2018, we really started pushing. We formed a Highland Lake leadership team, and that's an official committee between the towns of Falmouth and Wyndham. And we looked at all of the ordinance between the 2 towns. And we said, wow, there's some differences. And we looked at other towns around and said, what do they have for water protection? And we ended up, the result of that was Highland Lake has got the lowest for development. It has the lowest target that any developer can put a development in. We have the lowest target in the state. So nobody's got more restrictions on development than Highland Lake. It used to be, and in most of the state it still applies, if a development is going in and they can't meet their targets, they could pay a one-time fee and they were good to go. And then that money would be used to try to mitigate some other phosphorus issues around the lake. But to me, it was never a good equation, because if it was in the development, they needed to inspect those on a 5-year basis. If we just fix something on a road someplace, who knows if it ever gets inspected again. So we got that shut off for both Wyndham and Falmouth. Falmouth was already there. Wyndham matched that. And then the other thing that we did, I showed you that the development was almost nothing compared to regular houses. And we now have a point system in both towns. So that if you're going to disturb 200 square feet of surface, you need to meet this point system. You have to have buffers, you have to take the drainage off your roof and put it into rock-lined trenches so that it doesn't just whoosh out and erode into the lake. And that's for the entire watershed. So there are very few communities in the state that have that. Some do. Raymond, for example, I looked at theirs. In their case, the limit, ours is 200 on Highland Lake, theirs is 1,500. So you could put in a 30 by 50 building and just be under the limit. So you can put in a big shed, 10 by 20. And that's as big as you can go. With all the attention and new people coming onto the lake, 6 years ago, I knew nothing about phosphorus and how that impacted lakes, and got immersed in it as I got more involved with the HLA. And what we realized is that most people, I've been around lakes my whole life, and I didn't understand that. So I figured most people probably didn't. And through the Highland Lake leadership team, this formal committee between Wyndham, Falmouth, HLA, with support from the Maine DEP and the Cumberland County Soil and Water Conservation District, we put together this brochure. This one right here. There's some on the little table up in the back. This is really excellent. And when we made it such that any lake in the state can just take the whole format, take out Highland Lake and put in Webb Lake, or whatever lake they want to put in, and they can replace a few photos and they can use it. And there are 4 lakes that are doing that right now. So it was really well done. And the other thing that we did is we did have a lakeside, lake-friendly landscaping forum here about a month and a half ago. So everything we're trying to do is to help people understand how they can improve the water quality here.
Is the information from the landscaping forum available?
It is. It's on our website. Both actually. We have hard copies of this document out back, but this and the landscaping forum are on our website, so you can watch it at your leisure. With a road, when we did the 2018 watershed survey, we found some a few very serious erosion sites. And one of them was Overlook Road in the northwest corner of the lake. It was moving 54 tons of sediment a year toward the lake and 45 pounds of phosphorus. The 105 pounds of phosphorus I had earlier on the slide, that's on average. This is way above average. And so a lot of work was done to try to pull that together to try to address that. So the Highland Lake leadership team had put together an application for a grant, a 319 grant from the EPA. We applied for it and we were successful. We got about $100,000 out of that. And we applied some of those monies to this project. And the Road Association put up 12,500. The town of Wyndham in their watershed protection grants put up 12,500 as well. And then that was matched with $40,000 from this grant. So they just completed that. It was done with it was first professionally engineered. As you can see the drawing on the right, I know you can't read that, but it was very professionally engineered and managed by the Cumberland County Soil and Water Conservation District. And we've got the next slide shows some photos of before and after. You can really see the erosion on the lower left and the two on the right better even than the upper left. But you can see where the erosion was. And they were having to bring in dump trucks of new soil each year to fill in the places that had washed out. This was a first-class job that was done. And I think it's really going to pay off for the lake over time. So we've been talking about phosphorus. This is a curve again for 50 years of phosphorus readings on the lake. And you can see that it's slowly creeping up until about 5 years ago. And then again, because of the efforts of all of you, we've turned the curve. And you can, if you remember the one from the Secchi disc, almost an exact mirror to this. But to get phosphorus samples, you have to go take them at different levels in the lake. You got to send them out, cost about 12 or 15 bucks for every sample that you send in. It's slow and it's expensive. The Secchi disc readings tell you much the same instantly. And so, but this is really an important slide. And again, mirrors what the Secchi disc showed, that we are improving. We finally stopped it. But what this tells us, based on what happened before, is all we got to do is relax, and we're going to be right back up climbing in phosphorus levels. So it's something we can never, ever forget. We always have to stay on top of this. And with new people coming into the lake, we need to keep educating them as well as to how their own living can affect the lake. I'll go through the finance because that's pretty quick, and then if there's any questions on what I've covered, I'll be happy to answer them. Our budget runs at $7,800 a year, and you can see from the pie chart on the left, the bulk of that is for water testing. Some of the costs associated with that is the sampling that I'd already mentioned, but our boat is used almost exclusively for water sampling, probably 99% for water sampling, and so the maintenance on the motor, the registration, and the insurance all gets charged to our water quality testing. And for a 16-foot aluminum boat, anyone in here can get that insured for about 75 bucks a year. Because we're considered commercial, it's $750. I tried 8 different places. That was the lowest that I found. A bunch of them were over $1,000. So, that's where a lot of our costs go. We also have external dues is one of the other significant ones in here. And there are 3 other lake associations that we contribute to. Lake Stewards of Maine, because they help us out a lot. They store all of our data. We have it too, but that's where the DEP gets the data, is by our providing it to them. Maine Lakes Society, and also Lake Environmental Association up here in Bridgeton. We work together. A piece of our testing gear breaks, they'll provide it to us. They'll bring in expertise that we don't have. So it makes a lot of sense for us to be partnering with them on a lot of things that we do. We do have insurance is also a big deal, and in today's litigious society, there's insurance coverage for the board as well as for anything we do. We're going to do this swim across the lake. Probably a good idea. We'll have waivers, but pretty good idea to have liability insurance if you're going to do that. So we have to cover those costs.
And we're halfway through.
What's that?
And we're only halfway through the year.
Yeah, we're halfway through the year. And one of the things is on the water quality testing, we're halfway through the year. We're only a quarter of the way through. Most of this cost is the boat insurance and boat related. A lot of the sampling comes later. We've been sending samples since ice out, or actually even before ice out, but because we sample year round. But those bills don't come in till later in the year, so it'll catch up with us. So you can see that we're a little roughly a little less than halfway through our budget right now. But I'm very confident that we're going to come in within the budget. Just on the finances, the last thing I want to just share with is that there are some creative ways to help fund the HLA. I mean, most of you write a check, contribute online or however you do it. Mimi Gray, her husband passed away a year ago, and she lived on the west. She lived actually right at the end of Overlook Road, and she decided to sell her place. And her husband had all kinds of guy toys, and so she offered to the Highland Lake Association, if you guys want to run a yard sale, I'll give you all the proceeds. And Rosie Hotzler, Kim White, and Ray White helped get it all organized, priced everything, and long story short, we made $2,700. So that was put into our endowment fund that we're hoping to build, so that in time the proceeds from that will be able to cover a lot of our annual costs. The other picture is a dinghy that Kathy and John Costa was given just a month ago. And they reached out to me and said, hey, would the Highland Lake Association like this to sell? I said, sure. Minor repair, advertise on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and $500 later, check goes to HLA. So, be creative. There's ways we can raise money here without having to work. If you got an extra canoe or something around that you're not using anymore, talk to us.
Some questions.
Questions?
So we have an online question of how did you discover the Overlook Road issues to start with, and are you looking at other roads that may be problematic?
Okay, a question if people couldn't hear is how did we discover the Overlook Road issue to begin with, and are we still looking at these situations? The answer is in 2018, we did a very thorough watershed survey. We broke up into 8 segments around the lake, and we had teams go through every one of those segments looking for issues that were out there. And as a result of that, John McKinnon, who's here in the audience, he and Keith, but the two of them actually went back and made sure that the 8 segments of the lake, that the people doing the evaluations were on the same page. You didn't want one saying, ooh, this is real serious, and this one saying, same problem, but saying, no, it's not that bad. So we tried to make sure that there was consistency out there. They were all organized into severe, moderate, and minor. And we've gone after them. We've talked to the road associations. Those that were willing to work with us, we were able to get grants through most of them were in Wyndham and some in Falmouth. And we've gotten funds from both towns. And we get matched from the road associations. And we've been able to take care of a significant number of them. Well, a real significant number of the ones that people are willing to work with us. If the road association doesn't want to work with us, then at this point, we can't do much about it. So we're always on the lookout. If people see something, give us a call. And at some point we'll do another survey. But at this point, I think we've got a pretty good handle on what's out there. Hope that.
One more. Noticed a lot of winter sand from treatment of the roads runs off into the lake via drainage ditches in the spring months. Is it known how much phosphorus is in the winter sand? And is the town of Wyndham required to clean up this sand in the spring via street sweepers?
The question is, there's a lot of winter sand from sanding the roads that is making its way into ditches and ultimately down towards the lake. And is the town of Wyndham responsible for cleaning that up? The short answer is no, they're not responsible to clean that up. I know on Highland Shore Road, they just did that themselves here just recently. And it is an issue. There is phosphorus in that sand. There's no question about it. If you've got a gravel road, pretty hard to pick that up. And one of the things that we were looking into, and I think there's still an opportunity for it, and I thank you for that question because it gives me an opportunity to talk about this. If you have really good drainage and ditches, et cetera, there's oftentimes what's recommended is to put in little check dams to to slow the water down so that it doesn't just rush on through and sweep everything with it. But those get filled up with sand after a while. And there's plunge pools oftentimes by culverts where the water will go through, go under the road and drop down into a pool. And those need to be cleaned out periodically too. Oftentimes they have like 4-inch stone lined in the bottom, and that really catches a lot of the sand. If you don't clean them out periodically, it just fills up with sand, and then it's like you did nothing. That just keeps whooshing on through. We talked with the town of Wyndham and Falmouth, and there is a possibility of being able to get big vacuum trucks in to suck that sand out, because they can suck out one of those things in about 15 minutes, and they can adjust the vacuum so they're not pulling the big rocks out, just the sand. If you try to do this by hand, it's going to take a long time. I know some people have had it done, and the guy, an excavator will come in and he'll scoop everything out and haul it away. Now you got to go buy more 4-inch stone to line the thing again. It's very time consuming, very costly and expensive. So if we can, what I'm hoping to do is to get road associations to work with us. We'll coordinate it, and on a couple of days, not only here, but we're trying to set it up for Little Sebago and Forest Lakes as well. We can get a vac truck to come in and just make the rounds. If we've got 5 or 6 places on each lake, it's not going to be free, but it will take care of a lot of that winter sand, and it will go a long ways towards keeping erosion, that kind of soil from reaching the lake, because otherwise it's a real pain to try to clean that out. Any other questions here? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering what the status is of stocking the lake. As you know, it hasn't been stocked since 2012, and part of the fisher person's license fees are dedicated to maintaining a fishery. And the state doesn't stock the lake. Is there a position that the association has?
Yeah, if you couldn't hear the question online is the state stopped stocking Highland Lake with trout and salmon back in 2012. And they did that for 2 reasons, but the stated reason was because we didn't have a trailered launch. And unless we put in a trailered launch, they were going to cease the stocking. I'm an avid fisherman, and mostly for bass, so it didn't affect me. But I'm also an engineer and like to know what's going on. And I talked to IFW, one moment, sir. I talked to IFW, and they sent me the reports that they had from 2008 and 2010. I gave you the results of the 2021 one today. And what I learned from that is that very few of the fish that were stocked made it to the next year. And there was almost zero growth. On one of the charts that I showed you to begin with is that this lake by August, we have warm water that goes down to the thermocline, the difference between the top of the lake and the bottom of the lake. The bottom is really cold, but the problem is ever since phosphorus started affecting the lake back in the 70s and 80s, we went from having oxygen that went right to the bottom where there was plenty of habitat down there for cold water fish to thrive. But with all the phosphorus that made it into the lake, we lost that. And now we only have oxygen in the warm water area. And there's a little layer, you know, I don't know if it's 1 foot, 2 feet, 3 feet, but there's just one layer in there that's cold enough for trout that still has enough oxygen for them to be able to thrive. And they showed no growth. So, but there's a lot of places where the state stocks trout and it's put in tank. They put them in the spring, they're caught before the summer's over. But a big concern that this question was raised to the board. And the big concern was the more publicity that the lake gets about having a cold water fishery, the more pressure there will be, and we've already heard some before this, the more pressure there will be to put in the trailer launch. And even if they said they were going to eliminate all the bass in the lake, unless they put in a trailer launch, and I'm an avid bass fisherman, I would still say, don't put in the trailer launch. Little Sebago spends $80,000 a year on milfoil management. They can't eliminate it. And when I discussed this with the board and we talked about the pros and cons, it would be good to have trout back in here again. But the risk is, are we going to create more interest in driving the towns to putting in a launch that with trailers? And I think given the number of lakes that we have around here with milfoil, it's a matter of when, not if, it would come here. You can inspect the trailers. Who's going to do that? There's a cost associated with it, and at least the most recent cost we had was $10 a fish. You put 500 fish in, that's a fair amount of money every year. You know, it's not like we have habitat where they can reproduce. So the board was concerned mostly with the risk associated with it. So the board is not in favor of taking the lead on this. And sorry, you had a question
So
too?
that's what's keeping us from putting fisheries back in the lake.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
So that's what's keeping us from putting fisheries back in the lake is the board. Is that what you're saying?
No, the board's not keeping us from doing it. The board didn't say no. The board said, we're not interested in pushing it.
There was a launch there, there was a boat launch there for smaller boats and stuff before they put the rock there. The decision got at the town hall and found my father, John Gallagher, was at that decision that was made. It was from the people on that road that decided to shut that off altogether. My father was the only one for it. The reason they shut that off and put a rock there and made that carry on because they said there was too much stuff going on down there. Bottom line is, that lake belongs to the state taxpayers. They should be able to access. Do you really think that they want to go to Highland Lake with big boats and stuff and they just got to go up 302 and go to Sebago? We know how low that is in these for us putting boats in there.
I do.
When the state came in and bought the Blaze camp that's set right there many years ago, they came in, the state was going to put a full-fledged ramp in there, in and out, and beach to accommodate the lake. For everybody, all taxpayers. The fisheries have been there since 1932.
I think it needs more discussion.
That was the top fisheries in the southern state of Maine, which generated all kinds of money through licenses. There was also salmon that were mistakenly put in there because they were supposed to go to Highland Lake in Bristol. My dad took the initiative to tell them that they are doing great and their fish are not fished out every year. You're wrong.
I think it needs to more discussion. We're not
Yep.
solid here.
Oh, absolutely. I'm just voicing my opinion. That's the only reason I'm here.
Yep. Yeah, as I said, the board didn't say no. There's a lot more to learn about this.
The board has a lot to do though, as far as moving that back out.
Personally, I'll do whatever I can. This is me, not the board. I will do whatever I can to not turn that into a
One
launch.
thing like kayaks, canoes, and paddle boards.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
They come in there steady.
Yep.
Do you think they don't bring stuff in?
I think that,
Do you think we don't take our boats out of there and go to another place?
I've studied this a lot. I've got a lot that I'm happy to talk with you offline, but we're going to keep going at this point.
Can I have a point of interest?
Sure.
That meeting way back in Falmouth. I was there for that meeting with Fish and Game and everybody else. Fish and Game was very, very, how do you say that? Rough in saying that. You either let us put that ramp in or we're not gonna stock fish. And a fellow from the town council in Falmouth said, I've been fishing that lake for 40 years. And he says, I'm sick and tired of you people putting cold water fish to let the snowmobilers in the ice shack come down there and make a mess. We have to clean it up. Okay, that was fine. But then after that, the whole thing says that we don't give a damn. We'll buy our fish out of state. We bought our fish out of state one time. And the state stock fishing game stopped us because they were selling to the main fisheries up in Bangor or Old Town, one or the other. So we couldn't buy them. That was the whole fact of it. They were stopped by the fishing game.
Yep.
Because they didn't have their way. They tried to push us in the corner.
Lots more to discuss, and maybe the thing for us to do is to
Yeah.
end up having another meeting just on that for those who are interested. I'll offer that we can do something with that. At this point, nice segue into having Peter Herring, our game warden, come up. And
Throw me right now.
But I'm going to ask that we leave the trout issue out and let him cover the things that he wants to cover tonight. Go ahead, Pete. Thank you.
Yes. Well, for those that don't know me, I'm Peter Herring. I'm one of two district game wardens that cover this particular area. Been a game warden, or been with the state law enforcement now for 30 years. May I celebrated my 30th year. I tried to retire before tonight's meeting, but my lieutenant did not go to. But just to give you a little bit of history of the Maine Warden Service, I work for Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. That name's been thrown out a lot here tonight. The Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife is broken up into really 3 different divisions. You have wildlife, our wildlife biologists, you have our fisheries biologists, and then you have the enforcement end of that, which is the Warden Service. I'm in the enforcement end of it. I am here in the summertime. I am here in the wintertime. Each season's a little bit different. Enforcement actions are a little bit different. I will tell you, as an enforcement agent on this lake, it's really tough getting on and off the lake. The launch area that we use down here periodically. Once that water level, as I explained, goes down a little bit, it's easy as heck for me to show up and launch my boat, but it's a 2-man process to get the boat back on the trailer unless I drive to the point where the water's coming into the cab of the truck. So it's tough. So we have to a lot of times use our small boats and try to get on here. The beauty that you folks have here, we've talked about Little Sebago. I also cover Big Sebago and I cover Little Sebago. You have a lot of transients. I mean, you don't have a lot of transients compared to the other lakes. You don't have that public boat launch. You've got to carry in, carry out. I know that's kind of a hot topic, and the only reason I'm bringing that up is you don't have some of the bigger boats and stuff coming in here doing some of the damage they do on some of our other lakes. But that being said, you know, I talked with Dennis and I've talked with other people here in regards to the educational aspect of people that are utilizing that body of water here. And it's really the stakeholders. It's the people that live here. It's the people that own property here, because you don't have a lot of other.
You come over here closer.
You don't have a lot of other big boats that are what I call transients coming in here. So your educational piece is going to be really the people in this room and the other stakeholders that own properties and stuff around. I don't want you to be mistaken that kayaks, and we've got a big push right now as it relates to invasive aquatic plants, mussels, and a whole host of other things. Don't be mistaken into a safety net that These kayaks, these boats with electric motors, as such, aren't transporting that stuff as well. I am very proactive as a game warden, and I work with all our milfoil inspectors. Over the last 3 years, I've had 3 big fines where we've had invasive milfoil coming in from out of state. 2 of them from Georgia and 1 from Texas. We had some bass tournaments and we were able to make a successful find before those boats get into the lake. So I know as it relates to having the public come in with big boats, I understand your fear there. I will tell you that our milfoil inspectors that are out there, and I know that is an associated cost with that, they do a great job. They get a lot of training. These are people that are very, very, very passionate about what they do. And they inspect these boats pretty well. So I guess if there was any safety net, you'd know that if that ever did change, and you did put an inspector there, then certainly you'd have a safety net there as it relates to boats being inspected. I don't know what you have now inspecting boats that come in on the carry in, carry out. So right now you have nothing. So it's something to think about. In regards to the fish, I'm not gonna belabor that or get in an argument over that. What I will say is it's not Highland Lake that the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife is saying no to. That is our policy. When lakes shut off public access as far as trailable boats, we stop our stocking program. And it makes sense. What we're not going to do is take taxpayers' money and make a private fishery for somebody. So we can't. I mean, we have to look at the whole state and all those taxpayers. So if a body of water closes itself off to that public access, then our department has a standard policy, and it's been a policy since I've been here, that we're not going to keep stocking. So that's the end of that. I will say that in the wintertime, you do get a lot more of the transients that I talk about. And one of the things that I enforce as a state game warden, I do hunting, fishing, boating, snowmobiles, ATVs. And interestingly enough, Josh Tibbetts, I don't know if you know, he's this other warden that covers the Falmouth. Well, he covers the town of Falmouth. Either one of us cover the whole lake, but I cover the town of Wyndham. So either one of us could be over here. He and I had dinner today prior to this. And I asked him, I said, just give me a rundown of what some of your more popular calls are on Highland Lake. And a lot of it is the headway speed complaints, the 200 feet from shorelines. A lot of it is people calling up that there are unregistered boats because they don't see an active registration sticker on the boat. And then, you know, a lot of them, the boating OUIs. People are obviously impaired, they're out there in the lake, and people take notice to that, and then they call in a complaint, and we have to come and address that. And I will tell you, breaking that down, I asked them, I said, well, out of the unregistered, I mean, obviously the people boating under the influence or otherwise impaired, we're going to make a strong effort to get over there and address that. It's a big public safety issue. How many of them unregistered boats came to fruition? How many were actually unregistered? And he says, I can't tell you that I've ever got a call of an unregistered boat and actually going over there and having it unregistered. A lot of people do that online. They have to wait. They're dealing with the state. It takes forever to get your stickers. Just because you may have last year's sticker on that boat doesn't mean you're not in compliance. So those are very few. But the headway speed thing was kind of the big thing with both he and I, and it's one of the things that we both have had a lot of problems with. Again, I know you guys have put some markers out. I will tell you, and I heard a little bit about markers. I will tell you that the law requires the Department of Conservation Navigational Aids Division to place markers. You can't even, and this is one of the complaints that I've had on this particular lake, certain individuals putting swim areas out. You can't do it. There's a fine for every day that swim area is out there if it's not licensed from the Department of Conservation Navigation Aids. I have this problem on all my lakes, where you have small little narrows and stuff, and this person puts a swim line thing out. This one does, and now you can't even ride a boat down there. Coves and narrows and everything are getting blocked up. So just understand that if you're in this room or you're watching here, and you've got swim areas out in the lake, that you can be fined for each day that's out in that lake. It's against the law unless that is approved through the Department of Conservation and Navigation. So any questions on that? Because it's been a big issue on all our lakes.
I just wanted to respond to your point about the navigational markers. We did register.
Yep.
All of them, so we're covered there. So if you have any concerns about where we put in markers, Kevin took care of that, and we're right on where we're supposed to be.
And as I thought, but you know, the problem is we have a lot of people that take it upon themselves to go buy a marker, swim out there, put it in. I mean, we've seen propane tanks out there tied to cinder blocks as markers and stuff. But just understand, please, that we're cracking down on all our inland waters on that. And it's because of our complaint volume as it relates to that. So if we show up and there is a unauthorized swim area out there, there are unauthorized navigational things out there, then those are going to have to be addressed.
What I was informed by Bureau of Parks and Land was they do have specific, like, we can't put official state markers on every single rock in the 200-foot shoreline. There's probably about 100 points around the lake that we can't mark every one of them. So their permit requirements was to mark in the travelways, not from the shore to the travelways. So we've had requests where people say, I want to mark the one rock that I have 3 feet in front of my house. We don't do that. We don't mark every point, but we mark everything in the travelway.
And as far as underwater obstruction, shallow water, dangerous water and stuff like that, I got to be honest with you, as a game warden, I don't really have a lot of hiccups, and those aren't the complaints that we're getting as it relates to the buoy that's over the big rock in the middle of the lake. I don't have an issue with that. But when we start addressing swim areas and people have just roped off an entire section of property in the lake, and then they just keep getting bigger, and this guy does it and that guy does it, and those are going to be addressed, and those are what we get complaints on. The marking of a rock, I don't have an issue with that, or some underwater obstruction. That's a safety hazard as far as I'm concerned. I don't mind having them there, but just the people that go out and buy their headway speed buoys and put them out in front of their camps, or make their own and write headway speed or blah blah blah. Just be careful and cautious of that, because we are, as enforcement agents, tasked with kind of correcting that. Those have to come out unless they're registered and otherwise authorized through the Department of Conservation. So I just wanted to get that point out, because it is one of the things that we've had some complaints on this lake about in certain different areas. Once 3 or 4 people do it, now people can't even access that part of the water. And that water is owned by the entire state, all our taxpayers, just not the landowners here. So keeping that in mind, when we have those complaints, we will have to address them. Snowmobiling, we'll talk a little bit about that. Snowmobiling is a nightmare. We have several trailheads that kind of dump out onto this lake. There's a lot of people that access this lake via snowmobile. A lot of people come and ice fish this particular lake. One of my biggest complaints is the people that don't choose to remove their ice shacks when thin ice appears. And they think it's unsafe. They'll just let it float to shore or sink. They'll forget all about it. We've had instances where they burn them right to the ground out there, and let Mother Nature take its course. So we do go out in the wintertime. So you guys know, part of our enforcement actions, if I have a group of ice houses out there, I go out and photograph them. I get there, and we require to have your name and contact numbers on them. Most of us that are out on patrol will go and we'll photograph them all. I keep a file for Highland Lake. If in fact I show up and I've got one burnt to the ground, I know who to go see. If I got one left out there, I know who to go see. So that was one of the big things, is the ice shacks left behind or otherwise put on somebody's beach and forgot about, and they call me and want it removed. One of the big things. So Fishing and hunting. Fishing is still good here. It's interesting, we kind of split the south end of the lake with DMR. They deal more with the alewives and the populations and stuff. I deal with the fishing within 150 feet of the fish. So, you know, we kind of share some responsibilities on the other end. This particular year, I was up here to watch the alewives running, and I watched the counters out there. It was quite interesting. Done it years in the past, but it was pretty fun to see. Some of the other things that we're doing, and we talked about, somebody brought up balloons, injured loons here. Those calls come to us too. You got to come to Highland Lake. I got an injured loon. I get them on Sebago. I get them on Big Sebago and Little Sebago. I will tell you, it's not that we don't care. If you call me and I say, well, what is the loon doing? Well, it's got a hurt leg. Generally speaking, my response to you is going to be, I can't do a lot until that becomes so incapacitated that I can actually get it. Loons can hold their breath for 3 minutes. As soon as I show up in the boat, it's going down, and it's going to come up somewhere a lot different than where I am. And it's like playing a game of whack-a-mole out there on the lake. It's not feasible for us. The other thing on Highland Lake, you've got a big deer population around the lake. I don't know those that are in here saw, it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, we had the deer stuck out in the middle of the lake. Multiple calls came into our office for me to come and rescue the deer. I am an airboat captain. I have a 20-foot airboat. And our policy is we don't do that. Our policy is that if it's an injured wildlife, we're not going to risk a human's life to save injured wildlife. And just so you know, when deer go out on the lake, and you're going to probably see them, it routinely happens here on this lake, and they splay out. When they splay out, they rip all their tendons. Those deer aren't going to be a successful member of society. Those deer normally have to be put down and otherwise destroyed. When those legs get splayed out, and that's how the coyotes that chase them out there, they plan on that, and they become disabled. And like I say, otherwise injured to the degree that we have to dispatch them. That particular one, and you wanted me to tell you a funny story. I got the call, and we received multiple calls this particular night. We had an injured deer out in the middle of the lake, and that several civilians were risking their life, walking out on this very thin ice to go rescue this deer. And so finally, after, I don't know, the 20th call, my lieutenant said, do me a favor, whatever it takes to get that damn deer off the lake. I said, all right. So I went and grabbed my airboat, and I had a fire captain. I keep my airboat at Gorham Fire Department. One of the captains was there. He goes, where are you going with the airboat? I've never had an airboat ride. I said, well, if you want one, tonight's the night to get one. I says, hop in the truck. I said, I'm going to go rescue this stupid deer out in the middle of Highland Lake. He said, well, that sounds interesting. I'm in. So the fire captain, myself, brought the airboat. We put in the south end of the lake. Some of you guys might remember this. And I worked my way out, and it was very dangerous. It was very thin ice, and that deer was plugged right square in the middle of that lake. So I needed the second hand because I got to operate the boat, and I can't operate the boat and manhandle the deer at the same time. And the deer was a little bit bigger than I anticipated. So I'm glad I had this big, rugged fire captain with me. So I slowly pull up to the deer. I get the deer run. He's got a hold of the deer. I jump out of the driver's seat. We get the thing rolled into the airboat. He says, now what do? I says, grab him in the headlock and lay right on top of him. And I says, let me do the rest. I'll get you to shore. So all the way back to shore. Now you can only imagine a wild deer when they hear that prop fire up on an airboat. Not very impressed. And this one was not damaged to the point where it was disabled. And I looked, and it was funny. I barely could drive the boat. I was laughing so hard. First, he was on top of the deer within the headlock. Then the deer was on top of him. Then he somehow got control, got back on top of the deer. Deer got back on top of him. Well, as I got to shore, I looked. He's got no pants on and half his shirt's on. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That deer was taking his hoofs and just ripping his clothes right off him. He said, I just didn't, at that point, I didn't dare let go of the damn thing. He had scrapes. He goes, I got to go home and explain this to my wife. He had gouges up and down his legs, his belly. And course, I was nice enough to take a few photos of that particular incident. And I don't think to this day he'll ever forget that. But generally, and it's a funny experience, but I will tell you that it's not that we as an agency don't care about an animal. I signed up to save animals. I rehabilitate there, my wife and I both. And I try to save every animal I can, but just understand we are not Dr. Doolittle. A lot of people on all our different communities get very upset when we say, well, all right, the deer get hit by a car, and can it walk on 3 legs? Yes. Has it got an injured leg? Maybe, but they're very resilient animals and they do make recoveries. I've got 3-legged deer in Gorham where I live that have fawns each and every year. And it's only because I made a determination of let it be, nature's gonna take its course. You know, they are part of the food chain. So just understand that it's not that we don't care, and we do everything we can to help animals. One of the big things you guys are going to get confronted with is the new law coming out in 2024, and it's going to require, at that time when it comes in and it's enacted, everybody less than 25 years of age is going to have to take a boater safety course. Okay, have you guys heard about that? All right, so anybody born from after January 1st, 1999, and at January 21st, 2024, is going to have that completed. Now, they're starting at the young age, hoping that education that they give these young kids transfer up to their parents and loved ones and caretakers. But everybody from that point on is going to have that. People will be grandfathered as it relates to that law. However, that if you are going to be a guardian in 2024 of somebody that's 16 years of age or less, and you're going to teach them to drive your boat, unless you've had that course, you're not going to be appropriate guardian. So if you're going to supervise somebody, you have to have that course. That makes sense?
Yeah.
But if you're just going to go out and drive your boat, and you've been doing it, you're grandfathered. The only time you're not grandfathered is if you're going to be a supervisor or somebody under that particular age.
Will there be lots of places to take the course?
Yes, just this past weekend, I personally worked with the Coast Guard Auxiliary over on Sebago Lake State Park. We did some boat inspections. We're starting now to educate people that this is coming. We did a lot of handouts and stuff like that. I have a copy of the law here. And I can give it to you if you want to put it on at a later point. But we've got our agencies partnered with several different other agencies to include the Coast Guard. And they're going to be starting to post, and they're going to, ahead of time, they're going to start posting these training courses so people can get kind of ahead of the ball here. So in 2024, you'll already have that and be in compliance of that. One of the other things, so that's any questions as it relates to the boater safety course?
There are online courses that
Yeah.
you can take. They're available now.
Yep.
Or you can do it in person.
Do it in person, you can do it online. But I would encourage you, if you've got kids, grandkids, it doesn't hurt anybody to have it. My hope is it's going to teach some of these boaters that are out there a little bit of common sense when they get behind the wheel of a boat. And I speak more for some of the other bodies. I work on Sebago, and as you can imagine, all you need is a credit card, no common sense to run a boat and operate it. And we have a lot of accidents. We have a lot of fatalities. We have a lot of OUIs and just a whole lot of bad scenarios that take place because people don't understand how dangerous boats can be and how rough water is going to dictate how well you perform as an operator of a boat. So I suggest everybody takes it. It's going to be one of the things. I've been a game warden now for many years. I'm going to take with my grandkids. You know, it's something that interests me enough to see them take it that I'm going to take it myself. So that's it on the boating law.
Is it an annual license?
No, once you've had it, you've got it. Yep. But it's going to be a requirement as of that date.
Is this changing from the home safety course that has been around?
It's going to be basically the same points and topics, but they have added a few other things to it, but I mean, it's very similar to New Hampshire's boating safety. I don't know if you've ever seen that or taken that, but the boating safety course is, and again, what I'm going to do is this particular law, as it's laid out by the legislature, has a whole bunch of different organizations that are going to be doing the instruction. So if we can have him put that up on the thing, you can look at it in its entirety. If you go to our website, Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, under boating, you're going to see different venues. We also have a training. You'll see training in schools and where we post hunter's ed, we post ATV safety, and that's going to be in that list. So you can look at that and find out a local spot near you in an appropriate time to take it.
So if you take it one before, you need to take it narrow.
The only thing I don't know is if they're going to take New Hampshire's or some of these other states' voting laws. I would suspect they're gonna and have those appropriate to Maine.
I'm just thinking about names.
Yeah,
You know.
but if you've had it before and you've got a document that you've had boater safety, that's going to be the same course as what they're going to do.
Is this just for motorized boats?
Just for motorized boats. Anything with a motor, including electric. Any other questions? One thing I want to add, paddle boards. Big thing out here, big thing on all our bodies of water. Understand paddle boards, even though you stand up, okay, they're considered a watercraft. Okay, therefore you need a life jacket on that paddle board with you. You don't have to wear it, but you have to have a usable life jacket on that paddle board. That's a summonable offense not to have it.
Is that even with a harness? Even with the ankle harness?
Yep, even an ankle harness, it's considered a watercraft, you have to have a life jacket. Now, a lot of people, because they don't want the out paddle board, they're in a bikini or boxer shorts, whatever they wear, they don't want to wear a life jacket. They do have some inflatables, okay? It looks like a fanny pack, it's an inflatable, like a static. If you go in the water, poof, now you've got a flotation device. And those are suitable, but they're only suitable if you're wearing them. We've pulled several boats over where they've got them strapped to the front. So those inflatables only constitute a life jacket if you're wearing them. Any questions with that?
How about the leash? Is there a requirement for a leash on a paddleboard?
No, there is no requirement for a harness on a paddle. Okay, the only requirement is it is a watercraft and you have to have a usable life jacket. But it's under the size limit where you need a fire extinguisher, you need all these other things. So, but you have to have a usable life jacket on a paddle.
That's not like a cushion,
That's not a seat cushion. Those aren't a usable life jacket. They're a requirement for boats over 16 feet long. And it's made to throw out, but it's not considered a usable life jacket. A what?
Whistle.
On a paddleboard, you don't have to have a whistle because it's non-motorized. But the other thing, a jet ski, people that are out on jet skis, you have to wear your life jacket on the jet ski, and you have to have a sound making device, whether it be an air horn, whistle, loud obnoxious wife, you have to have that on board. And no, I was just kidding about the wife. I don't know how many times I've asked a boat pull up and there's a whole family on there. You got a noise making device and how many husbands point. This isn't going to work out good for you tonight, my friend. So that's basically it with the watercraft, but understand that those life jackets are pretty passionate to us. We've already had several drownings this year. And, you know, I teach waterfront safety and the use of life jackets. So just understand those inflatables, they're only a life jacket if you've got them on. Paddle boards wear them. Here's another one, these inflatable rowboats. That's considered a watercraft. So even though you blow it up, okay, you go out in the middle of the lake, and I had a guy on Sebago the other day, no life jacket in it. He goes, I just blew this up, it's like an inner tube. Why do I need a life jacket? And I reached over and I pulled the plug on. And he was panicking. I said, well, what happens if you pull that or something happens to that boat and you're in the middle of the lake and it sinks? What good's that inflatable boat, and you have to have a life jacket. So please, as you see people out there, remind them of that. You know, one of our big things this year is OUI, operating a boat. So, or operating a boat impaired. It's a big thing. It's happening on all our bodies of water, and it usually ends in very catastrophic scenarios. So I would ask all of you folks just to keep an eye on that. Check yourself, always have a designated driver. And we're seeing that not with just alcohol now that Maine has introduced recreational marijuana, that's happening all over the place. So if you're impaired, do not get behind the wheel of a boat. If you do, and you run into one of us, it's a quick trip to port. And it gets very costly. Any other questions for me? I will talk, we basically talked about the 200-foot headway speed. That's 200 feet from any landmass, islands, shoreline, any land, 200 feet. Okay, headway speed is just fast enough to operate the boat and steer it.
Now, does that include when you're taking off from your dock on water skis? Or
The
no?
only exception to the headway speed, and I'm glad you asked that. His question was picking up, dropping off water skis. That is the only exception to the headway speed violations. But understand, that's to pick up and go out in the lake, and that is to bring them back and drop them off in the same spot. We have a lot of people that think, all right, I'm exempt, I'm picking up, I'm dropping off, but meanwhile, I'm going in between this island and the shoreline and this and that. Negative. You pick up, you go to where you need to be, and then you come back. Pick up, drop off. That's not constant skiing. The only other thing I'll talk about skiing too is some of these boats that have ballast in them. And we're seeing a lot of damage being done to shorelines, docks, boats. These skiers go out and they have these great big water ballasts. And a lot of them are surfing. They're not even tethered to the boat. They're surfing behind it. And I will tell you that I had an instance last week where I was having my lunch in the middle of the lake and one of those boats went by me and the wake was so drastic and I'm in a 20-foot lund, I almost rolled over. I can only imagine what would have happened to somebody that was in a canoe or a kayak or a paddle board. I'm like, oh my God, I just never seen nothing like it. And I would ask that if you're one of those people that enjoy doing that, please be very, very cautious of that because you are responsible for that wake. You go buy a paddle board or you go buy a kayaker and you put them under and they drown, that's on you. You are responsible for that wake. Keep that in mind. And keep in mind what you're doing to the shoreline. And I understand that you guys have very few loons here, but there's a variety of waterfowl that take safe harbor here on the lake. They nest, and these waves and great big wake boats, they do a lot of damage to those nesting birds. So just be cautious of that. I'm not saying there's not appropriate places to do it, but please use those appropriate places. Think of your neighbor's boat tied up to a dock and it's slamming around. Or, I mean, otherwise their docks are getting dismantled because your wake keeps knocking boards off it. I mean, they do a ton of damage. And so I would say go to one of your bigger lakes, get out in the middle, do what you got to do. Just be cautious out here. That wake will go right across the lake. That wake doesn't stop after a few feet. That wake continues. It's oftentimes based on the conditions will grow by the time it hits shoreline. So be cautious of it. Any other questions for me? Thank God. No, it was a pleasure talking to you folks. And again, my name's Peter Herring. I'm one of the wardens here. Josh Tibbetts is the other one that covers Falmouth. So either Josh or I are the ones that are on the lake most of the time. Please feel free, if you see something that's unsafe, it has to be addressed, you call our state police barracks and we'll get dispatched. So I'm sure you'll see me more often.
Thank you.
I'm gonna bug out.
Okay, hold on, we have something for you.
Oh,
You could pick it up on the way out.
yeah, no, for all those that didn't know, we had a lot of damage just a few hours ago with this storm that came across the Bago Lake. And there's a couple campgrounds just prior to Jordan's store that got leveled. Kids trapped, bad scenarios. So a lot of people injured. So we had a very violent storm come across the lake. Boats are sunk, docks are broke. So I'm on my way to do pickup on that. Yeah, my night is just beginning.
On the paddle boards, I just saw an article the other day that showed some, wasn't around here, but a microburst hit and knocked the person off his paddleboard. He wasn't, his life jacket was attached to the paddleboard, not on him. And the wind blew it so hard, it blew it faster than he could swim. So he drowned.
Yeah.
He drowned.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we go to a lot of them. I will give you one guarantee. I have never looked to recover a body at the bottom of any lake, stream, or river that was wearing a life jacket. Take that to the bank.
So it's a sweatshirt.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for coming in tonight.
No, any other questions? And I'll email you that log. You can put it right up so they can read it in its entirety.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Tom VerLee, we need to take care of a couple of administrative responsibilities.
Thank you. That was a great talk, Peter. Thanks so much. My name is Tom VerLee. I'm part of the board of directors and the nominations committee. We have a little bit of business to conduct. I know you really want to stay to see that eagle clip, so I'll try to make this real quick. Number one is we need a quorum, and I'll act quorum by the bylaws as 15 members. Thank you for showing up tonight, and thank you for showing up online too. This is a great turnout, a meeting we haven't had in 3 years. We do have to technically approve the minutes, excuse me. Those minutes have been recorded entirely and have been available on the website for the last 11 months. So I've heard no objections, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adopt those minutes. I see that. Is there a second?
Second.
And discussion? All in favor of adopting those minutes? It's unanimous. Thank you so much. And our last item here, we're going to have a little attendance poll, and it's kind of fun to see how many folks are attending online. And I think we have some 40, 45 folks here in person tonight. And so Kevin has put up a little attendance poll here. If you have one person, two persons watching this meeting via Zoom, 3 persons or more, would you please check that box? It'll take us 30 seconds to get this interest level, and we'll just see how many folks are attending online.
And pull down. So we've got 60% is 1, 36% is 2 people, and 4% is 3 people.
So that's great. That's a great attendance. And so what we'll do is tally all of that and keep a record of that. But thank you for zooming in here, no matter where you might be. The current board of directors is 10 people. 6 people's terms expire this year, and 4 people's terms expire next year. And so those are the folks that have agreed to be incumbents and re-up for a second year, or second term, excuse me. Our next slide. One person is leaving our board this year, Addie Waters, who lives on Vista Drive in Wyndham. I understand she may well be leaving her residence as well there. She's been a board member since 2019. And we've really enjoyed working with her. And so we just want to say thank you, Addie, for all your service to the board. We're always looking for interested folks interested lake residents to join our board of directors. And we do have just a few expectations. We just really want you to attend the meeting. If you're part of the board, we have 5 or 6 meetings a year. It's not a big deal. You can attend in person, You can attend by Zoom, or you could say, no, I simply cannot be there. I'll just give my proxy to somebody who can vote for me after I'm pretty much familiar. But the whole idea is to be active, not active just on the board, but at least one committee. If this piques your interest, what you see here tonight, we'd love to have you discuss that with our president, Dennis, and we could move forward from there. We found the best way really is not to vote or nominate somebody without any warning or expectations of what's going to happen. Just see the board in action. So ask some questions, attend a board meeting, and look at the expectations. Can you be there for attendance, and can you be active on one committee? And if so, and if that works out and it's a good fit, then we can simply appoint you to the board for that one term. And then you can be part of that. And then if that all works out, and then you can get elected at the annual meeting for a 2-year term. 2 of our board members, current board members, have followed that same process, and that's really worked out very well. So our nominees for our board of directors this year are Dennis Brown on Pond Villa, president, Kathy Kellman on Highland Shores Road, Peter Simonson on Pride Farm, Mark Kinter, on Leonard Lane, myself, Tom, on Cottage Road, and Diane Wood on Intervale Road. I think it's a pretty good representation of all the communities around the lake. And so I'm going to ask now if we'll have time to vote. I just want to remind you that if you have made a donation at some point during this calendar year, you are eligible to vote. And if you haven't done that, we encourage you to do that, but you can't vote tonight. So I will accept a motion to elect the slate of officers, of nominees, excuse me. Is there a motion? Is there a second? And do we have discussion? Then I'll ask all in favor of electing the slate of officers. Raise your hand. And any opposed? It looks unanimous on this end, and
Same online.
same online. So thank you so much. I sure appreciate it. Also want you to know that if we have your email, and I think pretty much we do, you'll be receiving a communications survey, a little questionnaire, very short, on how can we communicate with you better. And it's short, it's quick, and I encourage you to give us the feedback we need so that we can be better representatives to you. The last thing I would ask is that your board has done a lot of work. If you look at all the things that are going on and what Dennis presented, there's thousands, literally thousands of volunteer hours that go into this. And so let's just put our hands together for that board, because I think that and now I think there's a really fun piece of video you're going to love.
It's going to take me a second. I apologize for the delay.
While you do that,
Yeah,
I'll just say one thing. Tom shared that there's an awful lot of hours that have been put in, and I can tell you, I've been on a number of boards. This is really an excellent board. Virtually everybody on this board jumps in and does one aspect or another of things that need to be done. And I so much appreciate the work that all of you do. So thank you.
I want to see what he's going to do when he gets to the top. How do you reach over?
I would say that puppy's a big piece.
Well, what would you say, 80 feet?
It's big, very big.
Wow.
Almost
So
full size.
that is surprising.
Mm.
Oh.
Yeah.
'Cause I- Yeah. Hmm. So that's coming down.
This guy's feisty. He's about 9.
What did he say?
Yeah.
About 9 pounds.
Watch his feet. He knows how to use them. Okay, got it.
Oh, wow. Right?
So Chris reckons this is 9 weeks old, so it's not far off from fledging.
That's amazing.
Now, what I might do is try and move forward. Head like this.
He's not yelling.
Take a picture right now.
Have the parents been tagged in the past?
I don't know if they have in this nest. I'm not sure. SGS standard band. It has a 9-digit number. No other eagle in the country has this band on. So if this bird is found anywhere else in the country, we'll know it's this individual bird. Now we're going to put on this field readable color band. So if you have a telescope or binoculars and you see a bird and you can read this band, you can let us know or let the federal government know, and they'll add that data to their big database. So this is 01B. This is your local chick. So we'll do the same again. Yeah. Let's swap sides.
I know a cat just like that. Anything but my toes.
So the bill might look scary, but it's the feet that do the damage. Yeah. That's what it kills with. So the halix is 35.7. The quill of the feather. So as the bird matures, this this will slowly disappear, and the whole feather will kind of grow. So this is filled with blood. So these are about halfway grown. So these are going to get even longer.
Now, is it about a pound a week that they put on?
Great question. I don't know the answer to that. I know that they put on a lot of weight at this age. They actually fledge heavier than the adults.
Yeah.
And because they just get fat with fish and food, and then they very quickly transform that to muscle. To
And
those
the
first
parents
flights.
disappear in September. And I think that's how they get them to fend for
They just stop
themselves.
feeding them.
Yeah.
Yeah. These birds are apex predators, so they are sampling the entire food web. So it's really, we kind of think of them as like sentinels for the ecosystem. If we can figure out what this bird has been eating and how many contaminants it has, it's a good clue as to the health of the whole ecosystem. It's really, really valuable. So we'll just take a tiny bit of blood. It might look like a lot, but these birds are very large. We can't take more than 1% of its blood, so it's not much in relation to how big the bird is. So will you hold the wing?
I just had that done today myself. I'm gonna watch.
Did you spread your wing?
Okay, and then you have one of those ready to go.
Yep.
And he's already done it.
Yep.
Let's make sure that's straight on. But we don't have to flap. So just hold the wing. Put the container.
They'll come out of this with a personality disorder.
About you, but I don't know who the first person was who decided it was a good idea to go up into an eagle's nest before they found out. that they
Hello
weren't
and
going-
welcome to Wildwood, here just outside of Canterbury and Herne Bay for a UK.
Sorry about that.
So, I really want to thank you all for coming tonight. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to try to get a response for you. Or if there are questions that come in online, we can get back to you with those. Any additional questions?
Well, one comment, apologize for people online who may not have heard the audio. I'll post the raw high definition video on our website so people can watch it at home.
If you couldn't hear that, Kevin will post the raw video online where you can really hear the people talking if it was hard for you to hear at home as we went through the video.
Thank you.